I would now like to introduce today's presenters. Rahul Gehani is a partner at Everest Group and a member of the pricing assurance team. He assists clients on topics related to price and contract benchmarking, strategic engagement reviews, and sourcing cost rationalization. Abhishek Sharma is a partner on the pricing assurance team and assists clients on topics related to price and contract benchmarking, strategic engagement reviews, and sourcing cost rationalization. Abhishek's responsibilities include providing delivery leadership on all of Everest Group pricing assurance engagement. Shitika Jain is a practice director on the pricing assurance team, where she advises clients on price benchmarking, contract assessment, and solution design and review. Her focus includes leading engagement in the space of applications, consulting, and next-generation services. Kunal Verma is the vice president on the pricing assurance team and assists clients on topics related to price benchmarking, solution review, and contract evaluation for business process services. Kunal's responsibilities include leading Everest Group pricing assessment for digital and transformation projects in business process services. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Abhishek.
Thank you. A warm welcome to all the participants in today's webinar. As we start the year 2024, if there's one thing which continues from the past year, we'd say it's a degree of uncertainty, right? Uncertainty in the economy, how the outsourcing market changes, and last but not the least, how pricing in services and software evolves through the year. So for today's agenda, we're going to cover three broad points. We'll start off with where outsourced deal pricing is headed in 2024, covering a bit on the enterprise mindset, a backward look to the historical H2 2023 movement, and then what's the outlook for 2024. We'll get into some actions on how enterprises can drive more savings from their outsourcing contracts. And then eventually, we also have a section where we'll cover how enterprises can realize better value from cloud and SaaS contracts, which means, software as a service. Towards the end of today's session, we'll take a few questions, which come through us through the Q&A part of the webinar window. So we'd encourage our webinar participants to share questions, and we'll try and cover them either through the course of the webinar or towards the end when we have a few minutes. So with this context and agenda setting, let's move to the next page to give a quick recap of what we actually heard the most in 2023, right? So if we were to just recap what the top 5 elements that we heard, clearly the first one was that if it's a buyer's market now, how far can one push rates down without impacting quality and delivery, right? So this has been a year of, if you may say, getting the balance or swinging the pendulum once again towards a buyer market and seeing, is there, merit in considering, getting a better deal from service providers, right? So that's point number one. Interestingly, the setting up of an alternate delivery model, using a captive or a GCC, what we may call it, an offshore center, was a key question, and that also resulted in a lot of build, operate, transfer type opportunities where we assisted a number of our clients. So that was another key theme. Excuse me. As is often seen in times of a tough economic environment or where there are headwinds, there are payment terms, right, where clients want longer terms, to conserve cash. So this was the third element that we saw, that given persistently high interest rates, is there a leeway to get better payment terms, from service providers. No conversation can be without Gen AI, as we may go through. And enterprises have been kind of, just wanting to understand the benefits around efficiencies, for them, right? What's the quantum, what's the best way to get it? And also from service providers, just the question around, is there a potential for additional or different revenue streams that might come in from an overall, benefit realization for their enterprise clients. Finally, the ever interesting topic of output and outcome-based engagement models. There's a constant kind of stream of questions that we get around. Is it the right time to move to such models? And B, if it is, what really are the mechanics and pitfalls to avoid as we go through them? With this said, I guess a question to Rahul. Rahul, are some of these points also reflecting in some shape as we see the 2024 enterprise expectations? Yeah, over to you.
Yes, good question, Abhishek. And if we move on to the next slide, as some of our regular audience would be aware, at the end of each year, we conduct a study to understand the key challenges that enterprises aim to solve for, in the coming year. And what you see on, this page is basically, how the results of that study, which we conducted, while 2024 was just about to start, compared with a similar study that we did when 2023 was about to start. And the key challenges that generally we aim to talk about are essentially, it could be cost and margin pressures which enterprises are facing. There could be challenges with regard to adapting to evolving customer needs, a slowdown in the demand that clients are facing, so on and so forth. As we talk about 2024, I think keeping in mind the economic uncertainty, it's really no surprise that enterprises are still kind of, struggling with, understanding how they can cope up with the cost-related challenges, how they can keep their margins intact. So that's the number one challenge, and we expect that will definitely translate and percolate down even when it comes to the way they think about outsourcing, be it any new initiatives they are taking up, or let's say, be it an existing outsourcing relationship that they are facing. We expect that cost and margin, will kind of percolate from the enterprise's perspective into such kind of deals. But with regard to some of the other challenges like adapting to evolving customer needs, slowdown in demand, we're not seeing too much of a divergence between 2024 and 23. I think one area where which has really spiked up this year is basically the geopolitical and location risk. And that's not surprising, keeping in mind, the conflict which is going on in West Asia, as well as, in Ukraine, that has really shot up in importance, in the minds of all enterprises. Shilika, this is basically a high-level view of the challenges that enterprises are facing. It will be interesting to see how these correlate with the expectations that they have from service providers that they're working with.
Absolutely, Rahul. If we move to the next slide. Right. So the real world challenges eventually shape up the buyer expectations, and in today's competitive landscape, the dynamics between buyers and suppliers are ever evolving. In the last few quarters, we have seen that shift in the priority areas, and when it comes to either vendor selection or expectation from the current service provider set. Now, a higher focus is now on innovation, proactiveness, and service delivery. In fact, through our industry interactions, a clear enterprise preference for strategic collaborations is quite evident. Innovation happens to be no longer a bonus area, rather a key criteria for selecting and retaining suppliers. Buyers, in fact, are increasingly valuing suppliers who go beyond reactive problem solving and would rather anticipate and address these issues beforehand, even before these issues arise. So now this proactiveness could be in the form of, say, communication. It could be in the form of having preventive mechanisms in place, or in fact just by having a forward looking approach throughout client interactions. This shift is an opportunity for, in fact, both buyers and suppliers to create long-term and mutually beneficial partnerships. It will be very interesting to see how the FT pricing are changing in the next in the last 6 months. How have they evolved? And Kunal, would you like to walk us through the details on the next page, please?
Sure. Shritika, as Rahul highlighted earlier, cost and margin pressures has been influential in driving the price change in the last year broadly. So if you look at the numbers, if we categorize these skills based upon their complexity, based upon their niche virtue across IT applications, infrastructure, and BPO services, the price change for the onshore location, and herein we are considering the Americas, broadly varied from -1% to 1% in the last 6 months, July to December 2023. And for offshore, the price change ranged from a drop of 1% in certain contracts and engagements to an increase of about 1.4%. On the other hand, if you look at the price change for specialized skills across IT applications, cloud and cybersecurity, and the other flavor of BPO skills, which are characterized by their domain-intensive nature, the price change is a bit higher, but again muted compared to the price change that we saw in 2021 and 2022. Interestingly, in certain deal scenarios, we have witnessed service providers to go very aggressive when it comes to FTE-based rate cards, right? Even from the earlier stages of the procurement cycle, especially for traditional skills. One of the other tactics that some of the service providers are effectively deploying is counterbalancing or cross-subsidizing the location-wise rate cards based on deal dynamics. And this has become very common and is likely to continue this year as well. So in a nutshell, the price change for 2024 is going to be interesting. We expect it to be muted. And in some engagements, we expect that the price could actually go down from the current levels. With that, Abhishek, shall we discuss on how the pricing for the outsourcing services would likely play out this year?
Absolutely. Let's move to the next page, and this is an interesting poll. Before we actually share, what we believe, we'd request the participants to spend a few seconds and just cover this quick poll, right? And let's see where this takes us. Rahul, such polls, often the most simple ones, right, with just 4 options, seem to have sometimes the ability to display some rather interesting results, right? Because it all depends on the specific function, the country where the participants are joining from. So I'm waiting with bated breath.
Yes, absolutely. I remember when we did this poll about 12 months back, a lot of the respondents were expecting the price surge of 2022 to continue even in 2023. And to be fair, in the first half of last year, we did see some level of price increases happening, but as Kunal explained, we saw that becoming more muted by H2.
Right. Okay, so looks like we have the results in front of us. 82 of the participants have responded. So thanks everyone for that. Overwhelming, if we were to look at it, I think the largest frequency distribution is what we would term as a flat, right? Relatively flat. With same as 2023 being close to about 50%, around 44%, and then if we combine it with the flat to low, we're getting close to 3/4, right? Even though I must admit, we're still a bit intrigued by 32% mentioning higher than 2023. But again, if we look at the trends, it seems kind of flattish seems to be the most prominent. What do you say, Rahul?
I would agree that, basis whatever we are observing in some of the deals that are currently underway, are about to get signed, we do see a flattish kind of movement. So would largely agree with, that particular point of view. In certain specific situations, we expect that, the pricing might even go higher, but I don't want to steal Shitika's thunder on that. I know Shitika has some
Absolutely.
point on
Absolutely.
that.
And absolutely. And there's a lot of nuance and multiple factors on that. So Shitika, do you want to cover the four factors, which could potentially drive before we actually come to the numbers, so to speak?
Absolutely, Abhishek. If you can go to the next page, please. Yeah. So on this slide, we put together four key factors that are likely to impact pricing as the year progresses. And the poll result does resonate with the market sentiment. We, in fact, see a lot of these, resonating in the deal scenarios, the price conversations that are happening. And mostly the price would be muted going forward, at least in the coming few quarters. Largely, the geopolitical situation over Eastern Europe will continue to have an impact on the global economies and the overall market growth. These uncertainties reflect in the demand supply dynamics as major economies continue to struggle with managing some of these inflationary pressures. Although the inflationary challenges have eased compared to last year, but the businesses continue to be wary of the fluctuations, especially in the coming few months. Now, many large enterprises are undergoing strategic shift by moving away from piecemeal renegotiations to more comprehensive supplier rationalization initiatives. This shift is due to higher focus on long-term partnerships that many enterprises are strategically streamlining and driving out deeper value through these supplier relationships. Now, from a supplier's perspective, there continues to be a competitive pressure again in terms of pricing. There are cost pressures. We have seen multiple scenarios wherein service providers are adopting aggressive pricing strategies to secure deals. This may lead to short-term gains. However, in a long term, this raises questions around sustainability of such contracts. It raises questions around the service delivery quality. Kunal, assuming all of these outcomes are come out to be stable, all these four factors are stable in the coming few months, what do you think could be the impact on the pricing for 2024?
Sure, Shritika, and that's the basic assumption that you're asking me to make, right? Considering all the four factors yield a stable and a certain outcome. So if you look at the price ranges that we expect going forward this year, and this resonates with the poll as well to a large extent across IT and BPO services. We expect the price change to be muted, and on average for IT application services, the range for onshore is expected to move anywhere between negative 0.2% to 0.5% on the upside. Again, this is more likely to be the same as 2023 case that the audience has highlighted. For advanced services, wherein the demand supply equation could be a bit skewed towards the demand side, the price change is expected to be a bit higher and could range from 0.7% to 1.2% increase. For the BPO services, and herein we are talking about the transactional services such as finance and accounting, contact center, etc. This is an area wherein we do believe that the rates may go down by 1% or so, or likely to remain same if the other things like service quality, relationship with the enterprise is strong. On the offshore side, we might see a bit of a pressure. So for standard services, the rates are expected to move anywhere between negative 0.5% to 0.2% on the upside. For advanced services, again, it's more likely to be within the 1% mark. And for BPO services, just because of technical factors such as FX depreciation, service provider vying for the same business, we do expect that the price for certain transactional skills could actually go down to as much as 2%. So with this background, let's discuss on the pertinent cost optimization themes anticipated to be deployed by the enterprises going forward. Next page, please.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, thanks, Kunal and Shitika, for sharing the price projections and underlying factors. It is often a complex mix, right? But if you were to look at some pertinent trending themes, which we believe will shape up enterprise spending, the first one is definitely going to be contract benchmarking, right? And why do we say that? As in the aftermath of major commercial upheavals, we would see the 2020 to 2023 pricing ups and downs as a major series of shifts. Most contracts lose their alignment with market norms, right? For example, we've seen some where either the rates, because of the hike which was given in 2021, 2022, that they are now out of whack, or where the rates are largely fine, but the performance and ongoing efficiency metrics are totally out of line, right? Leading to an overall poor experience. And that's quite common, which happens. So, clearly, there is definitive value in making sure that, as of today, right, where does the particular contract lie, both in terms of price, performance, solution, terms and conditions, multiple elements, right? The second element, which is a bit of a continuation from last year, is what we'd call portfolio rationalization. Mostly it's driven by the desire to get to a streamlined governance and better commercial terms like volume discounts, or even better underlying unit rates, right? So there is a constant, drive to reallocate portfolios, to vendors and expect a benefit through volume discounting. Innovation, right? Everyone's favorite word. It's actually something which took a backseat during the talent crisis of from a couple of years ago, 2021, 22. The focus being on keeping the lights on. Clearly, the spotlight shifted, but it's now back, right? Because clearly, enterprise buyers see a lot of the nice stuff written in proposals and sales pitches, but then when it comes down to actual delivery, the experience is rather pedestrian, if I may use the term. So there is a lot of expectation, right? Gen AI, interestingly, is expected to be one of the core areas where buyers now have already embarked on POCs, and the desire is to see a bulk of them at least get into production and drive those benefits, right? So given the context on these three, there's the questions which are being asked are, hey, what's the direction of the bill rates? I mean, should we lock in our current rates for the next 2 to 3 years to avoid a situation like we had in 2021, 22, if suddenly there is an upshift? How are the peers buying Gen AI, right? What are the costs? How will it impact productivity? The whole concept of, return on investment, rather than just having a shiny new toy to show off, right? Will it really benefit, and what are the ifs and buts and conditions for that? And then clearly, sustainability in services spend, considering the carbon impact of emerging technology. So there's, multiple facets about new technology. It's not just about, hey, let's just use it and get better benefits. There's the whole, ecological angle, there's environmental angle, there's the data security angle. So interesting times and some rather nuanced questions, which have kind of, come our way, right? So in this section, we've covered the historical and expected movement of pricing. I think it's now time to move to the next section. So if you move to the next page, yes, this is where we discuss a few actionables, right? How can enterprises drive more savings? We'll start off with looking at how enterprises are still losing value, in outsourcing contracts, and then cover a few levers to drive savings that we've seen in recent deals. Okay, right, Kunal, over to you.
Sure. Okay, so all right. Now, if we talk about the cost optimization levers, I think there has been proactive efforts from both the enterprises and the service provider side to rationalize and stave away the inflationary impact. Now, one of the important things that we observed in 2023 was, the emergence of the new cost-effective centers globally. So herein, I'm not limiting ourselves to newer delivery countries, in LATAM, APAC, etc., but also including the new cost-effective tier 2, tier 3 cities within the existing delivery locations, right? So if you talk about Mexico, if you talk about India, if you talk about Philippines, Romania, there has been emergence of newer cost-effective centers which are addressing the impact of inflation. The second one that we observe is the buyers consolidating their outsourcing portfolio in 2023, and we covered it in a bit a while earlier. One of the commercial advantage is the savings that the enterprises are able to accrue through higher volume discounting. Generally, if you are having a large book of business with your preferred suppliers, you can ask for higher volume discounts. Benchmarking of existing spend was actually instrumental for the enterprises to identify areas where the fee was misaligned compared to the market norms. And this wasn't restricted only in terms of the rate cards, but also in terms of the solution parameters that the service providers were deploying in their deals, be it the onshore-offshore ratios, be it the effort ratios to fulfill volumes, etc. Transformation and innovation, like Shritika mentioned, again, those are table stakes now. Those are not differentiators. And in fact, people say RPA and the benefits through RPA, and we see multiple proposals just trying to compete against each other in terms of the benefits for the enterprise. So again, transformation and innovation is one of the key important inflationary offsetting measures that service providers and enterprises have taken. And lastly, we have also observed that the buyers are themselves building digital capabilities to transform the services, optimize the cost of operations, be it outsourced services or even be it in-house services. And they are expecting the services to be outsourced to a different vendor. So in spite of the focus on these cost optimization levers, value creation levers, we regularly observe that value is actually leaked in outsourcing contracts, be it the first generation outsourcing contracts, be it the second generation outsourcing contract. We see a lot of value leakage. So in this regard, Shritika, would you like to cover the extent of the value leakage in different generations of outsourcing?
Sure, Kunal. Right. So in our advisory experience, we see value leakage to go beyond pricing itself, just to be very clear. More than often, a compromise can happen with regards to, say, solution sizing, inappropriate pricing structures, a mismatch in productivity expectations versus actual productivity attainment. And there are definitely clear shortcomings when it comes to contractual terms and conditions. So Kunal spoke a bit about solutioning optimization, but under-solutioning and overestimation are quite common. And this can be true for, say, even very commoditized services like AMS. Although most of the mature service providers have all the frameworks, estimation methodologies in place, which goes beyond, say, the standard ticket sizing method of, sizing a support services deal. Often we are seeing that there are gaps in pyramid, there are gaps in the right location mixes that the service provider could go for. Productivity levers are often, not optimized to the nth level, and even the other sizing parameters are at fault for that matter. Now, the parlance also holds true for transformation services, wherein the solutioning at times doesn't translate to the client's existing technology landscape requirements. These mismatch scenarios are more pronounced for less mature outsourcing buyers. However, it's not. We've seen that to be true for even second generation, third generation mature outsourcing clients. Another aspect of deal solutioning can also lead to significant value leakage. It could be in terms of ambiguous TNCs and contractual, constructs, a lack of performance-based incentives, or inadequately structured risk-sharing mechanism. All of these factors can lead to actual value loss. But these can also impact the overall buyer-provider relationship over a long term. So that goes without saying, but then these are important parameters to consider. And Now, this can be done by strategically managing solution sizing, pricing structures, productivity. Organizations can enhance the overall value derived through outsourcing contracts more effectively. The potential savings that you see on the slide down below, these are significant for any enterprise of small to large scale of operations. And these does warrant having deeper vendor conversations during the sourcing phase. We've spoken a bit about benchmarking, but Rahul, would you like to share your thoughts on how best benchmarking around these deal parameters can be crucial for enterprises at times?
Yes, Shatika, absolutely. And the interesting thing is that while benchmarking of pricing as a conceptual thing is nothing, there's nothing new about it, right? But it still remains a very important savings lever for enterprises. And in 2023, what we observed, and we believe it's going to hold true even in 2024. The reason is quite simple. Couple of years back, we saw lots of deals getting signed, with high pricing. Because that was a time when demand from enterprises for IT as well as BPO services was really surging. Talent crunch was at its peak. And in addition to the high pricing that was getting included in the contracts, COLA was back with a vengeance. As a result, even when we talk about those deals as they stand today, they have been through high pricing, which has been further exacerbated by 1 or 2 years of COLA. As a result, the pricing in a lot of contracts is now really out of line, with the current market norms. Benchmarking itself is always a paid exercise, but the ROI on that is fairly obvious in most cases. Enterprises can realize, ROI of anywhere between 20 to 30x, in mid-sized portfolios. The critical part is that to get it right, there are two very important things that need to be done. Firstly, which is quite obvious also, is that the data underlying the benchmarks needs to be very, very accurate, very, very contemporary. It has to be taken from live deals, which are not ideally more than 12 months old. And in addition to the right kind of data, the benchmark should also be accompanied by forward-looking trends and projections. You're talking to one of our important stakeholders who's just last week, and the discussion was that benchmarks are very, very good, but they reflect the past. And if you are essentially using them to sign contracts for the future, it's important to have accurate predictions of what the projections are, for the next 12 months, for example. The second important part when it comes to benchmarking is that the benchmarks do have to be contextualized the right way, and that means the nomenclature alignment or normalization for the contractual terms and conditions, for service metrics, for various subjective elements that might have some kind of a justifiable premium as well. All of those need to be taken into account in order to make sure that the benchmarks are effective. Abhishek, you actually led some of these engagements recently, and I think there were some interesting approaches that you observed in some of those engagements. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely, Rahul. In terms of, I'll tell you an interesting one. As we see on this page. Yes, enterprises will get into, benchmarking, making sure, that they're paying as per the percentile that they want to. Our general advice is to kind of, have it more, a bit of a balanced view on our median, either zone of competitive, zone of balance, etc. But then, there are alternate views as well. So in this case, what we saw was, enterprises moving ahead from just using portfolio consolidation to invite better rates. This was a case where they prescribed a set of rates as a condition for a challenger to get into the portfolio, right? Service providers we know would have refused this 12 months ago, 18 months ago, are now much more open. especially where there's a strong desire to get a foot in the door, and even otherwise, right? With sustained sales growth being key, right? In today's times, no one wants to really let go of business. So as expected, almost always these prescribed rates are in the 10th to 30th percentile ranges. In one recent case, we saw rates being prescribed which we'd not seen for a long time across the entire in scope role set. It's not that, hey, it's super competitive for India, but it's okay for US rates. No, across the board, I think that's what competitive tension at its most impactful self is. So yeah, I think that could be one option, right? Especially in cases where the right kind of competitive tension exists and there's a strong desire from a particular supplier to kind of deliver quality at a super competitive price. That could be one way in which to overall balance out the portfolio, right? So while this was about rates, Shitika, there's also, I believe, competitive tension which has crept into an increase in discounting themes. Again, some of those which had disappeared in 2022, as in, oh, what's called a discount, seems to have been back with a bang, right?
You're right, Abhishek. Although these discounting mechanisms are not new, we are seeing this played out more aggressively both ways. Buyers today are having a heightened expectations around pricing flexibility, and service providers are equally responsive to these expectations. So this is unlike the market that we saw in 2022 or early parts of 23. And most of them are now offering these levers more often than what would have been done a few years ago. In fact, even sole source deals are seeing these discounting levers at play quite often now, which is obviously a very sharp departure from the practices that we saw earlier. Some of these themes are quite prominent now. Providers are more open to foregoing termination fee. They are agreeing to flat discounting for even mid-sized deals. There is a pushback from buyers on inclusion of COLA, foreign FX clauses, which is again not, which is very unlike of 22 scenarios where a lot of these conversations were happening around COLA inclusions. Offshore discounts and amortization strategies are also emerging as integral components of negotiation playbooks. So there's a clear indication reflecting a shift towards more flexible contracting pricing models that meets the evolving needs of the market. Now, moving to the next slide, Kunal, I'm sure our audiences would be very eager to hear our perspective on Gen AI and its leverage in outsourcing contracts. So would you like to give some perspective?
Absolutely, and it's quite a interesting area, and the trigger point, Shitika, is see the productivity and the savings potential in certain engagements have plateaued over time. I recall Abhishek hinting about this during the previous slide. To overcome the stagnation, the enterprises and providers are exploring what generative AI could bring to the table. Now, in 2023, there were several proof of concepts and early investments into the space across business process areas, IT applications, and infra services. And the study has revealed that generative AI does have the potential to drive savings. The question now for the enterprises and the service provider is that how can they take this POC business case into production stage, because it comes with its own set of challenges around data integrity, data security, commercial guardrails, etc. Right? And of course, what's the right commercial model? How can I be sure that I'm not paying more for this service? Is there a definite business case that can eventually be realized by the enterprise side? So here on this page, we have a few use cases of generative AI across the contact center value chain that starts from contact origination. And herein what we have observed is that generative AI has the potential to rationalize the volumes to be serviced by either the digital channels or the humans in the first place. So rationalize, optimize the volumes by creating a more advanced FAQ or a knowledge base that the customers or the stakeholders could refer to, right? Now, in case the contact is moving to the next stage, can it be serviced by digital channels? And that's where Gen AI can actually improve the digital containment rate to reduce the dependency on labor. And we talked about inflation, etc. Herein, the Gen AI powered chatbots are capable of handling complex intents, query types, etc. And finally, if let's say the inquiry needs to move into the queue of the agents, that's wherein we have seen generative AI can actually reduce the average handling time of calls by automating some of the stuff such as after call work, greetings and identification, etc. So this is quite an evolving topic, and we have started to see service providers include as part of their proposals their Gen AI solution. So we have been advising buyers and providers on these developments over time on next gen themes like automation, analytics, and many other topics. Shritika, would you quickly like to expand on the market developments in this area and our primer?
Right. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Yeah. So one of the common themes, like Kunal mentioned, of at least the client reach out to us has indeed been generative AI. And any kind of revolving theme around it, say productivity, what's the impact on the existing volumes, what's the impact of my account at an overall strategic level going forward, what are the long-term vendor strategies associated to Gen AI, so on and so forth. So in regards to these evolving themes, we today offer a complimentary primer to our audiences who are joining us today in the webinar. The primer would essentially include the recent trends impacting the commercial landscape for IT and BPO services, a correlation of supplier financial performance trends uh, to the deal behavior, and how should buyer behavior evolve in accordance of these evolving trends. We are also offering two anonymized deal examples from the recent deals we advised on that will highlight key strategies adopted by both the parties to attain favorable business outcomes. Now, to get access to this primer, you can click on the link that's shared in the chat window. Okay, now moving on to the next slide. Up till now, we had discussions around the pricing considerations for service contracts. In the next section, however, our attention will shift towards exploring cloud and SaaS contracts. So let us hear from my colleague Abhishek on what are the challenges enterprises are facing in the current scenario when it comes to SaaS and cloud contracting and pricing. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thanks, Shritika. Thanks, Shritika. So, this is a unique situation where enterprises are obviously under pressure to optimize their budgets, but they're facing headwinds due to recent price increases among various software products. See, services pricing increase is one thing, right? One can balance things off. Software pricing increase actually hits almost instantaneously, right? Because the spend is so large, the percentage impact is much higher. But as we can see, the many main product vendors have increased or are in the process of increasing their pricing by significant amounts. The numbers you can see vary anywhere between 8 to 10% or as high as 26%, right? Clearly cloudflation, as we may call it. Now, there are some material factors causing this increase. This could be an ever-increasing feature set, higher energy costs, organization strategy, differentiated market position. So a lot of these things are causing it. But then the question is, do enterprises simply have to sit back and pay the bill? I don't think so, right? I think, Rahul, there are some concrete negotiation steps which can be taken, right?
Absolutely, Abhishek. Even while purchasing software or cloud licenses, there definitely are levers to save costs. The exact levers depend on the situation. For example, if it's a new purchase or a new subscription, or let's say whether it's a renewal that is under process. whether, let's say, it's the vendor who has a transformed model of delivering, a particular product, for example, moving from an on-premise to a SaaS model, so on and so forth. For a moment, if we focus on, let's say, the movement from on-premise to SaaS models, there are some interesting takeaways. Firstly, in a large number of cases, we have observed that the move to SaaS, actually has been a forced one for enterprises, because vendors were either ending support for the on-premise versions, or they were releasing new features only on the cloud. Hence, the clients were forced to kind of move from on-premise to SaaS. Now, there are various aspects that need to be thought through in such situations to ensure effective negotiations. For example, one very basic thing that needs to be done is, the product itself is not changing. It's the same product. What was the spend that was incurred while the product was on an on-premise model? And then what is the proposed fee, when it comes to the SaaS version? There can be some level of a cost increase which can be justified, keeping in mind that it is hosted on infrastructure, which is ultimately paid for by the vendor. But if that incremental cost is significantly high, then it's a clear red flag. I think as a best practice, it's important to make a checklist of such kind of aspects. Other points to keep in mind are, what are the what is the entire list of items that should be negotiated? Should it be SLA? Should it be support provided by the vendor? Is the vendor willing to invest, when it comes to, let's say, the actual transition from the on-premise to the SaaS model, provide some professional services, for example, in such a situation. Also important to keep in mind that, not all of the asks or, items that go into the negotiation list, will ultimately be won. Some of the items should also be identified as, ultimately giveaways for the vendor. So you win some and you lose some. So you need to identify, which are the ones that you are willing to lose on. So those are some of the important points to keep in mind in this situation. Kunal, but in general, for any kind of a discussion or negotiation which is around software or cloud purchase, what are some of the other levers that you have come across?
Yeah, so Rahul, based upon the levers that have been tested by the enterprise, I will like to touch upon 5 key tactical areas. So one is the price protection clause, right? Having such a clause certainly helps to mitigate any unseen inflationary risk over the agreement term. In a few cases, especially if we talk about 2022, having an explicit COLA clause actually helped the enterprise in their objectives around cost management. And it also provides better visibility into the future cost for cloud and SaaS-based products and services. The second one is price benchmarking. It's really important to ascertain the competitiveness of your cloud and SaaS pricing based upon the volumes that are outsourced and the functionality of the product that is being procured. Many a times, the enterprises are a bit confused on what's actually included in the package itself. Number of features could be included and excluded, and could be paid for separately as well. So benchmarking is an important level. The third one is, besides the recurring cost, besides the main recurring cost, which could be your subscription cost, it's important to understand other charges which could, come up. So one could be your maintenance and support charges, training charges. Those are some of the other things that the enterprises should be mindful of when they are comparing their product against the market. An important consideration for the enterprise side is their own consumption of the licenses. Many a times we have seen that the enterprises have procured in bulk, but in terms of the consumption, there could be some delays, or there could be a ramp-up cycle in terms of the consumption of licenses. And we believe that it should be tied up with the plan, with the utilization plan, so that the working capital is optimized from the buyer's perspective. And finally, strong negotiation strategy is very important. We have seen tough discussions between the enterprises and the large product vendors, be it Microsoft, Google, Amazon, etc. So having a strong team, which are aware of the historical consumption, aware of the benchmarking, nuances such as volume discounts for volumes, etc. Those are the key levels which the enterprises should have in their armory. So, Rahul, while we talked about this, would you like to talk about the recent project wherein we supported a buyer on cloud license benchmarking?
Yes, absolutely. So this is a simple example that demonstrates, that contracts with software vendors are by no means a black box, where you have to toe the line drawn by them. In this case, we were basically working with a leading apparel and footwear company, which had, their contract with Salesforce coming up for renewal. This included, various modules of Salesforce, the core cloud, the marketing cloud, the commerce cloud. And we basically went about it in a very tried and tested way. We first of all got all of the inventory information from the client's environment, what all modules they have, what is the number of licenses for each of them, what are the current costs that they are paying, what is the proposed fee for the renewal. We benchmarked, for each of these modules, the prices, against our internal database of recent Salesforce deals, and ultimately shared a lot of contextualized negotiation levers to ensure that, the right kind of price reductions could be attained. The benefits were very, very clear, and the interesting part is, like Kunal mentioned, it's not as if the same trend is observed with regard to the pricing, across various modules. For example, in this case, out of the three modules, the marketing cloud and the commerce cloud were two situations where we did not see too much of a room for improvement. It was ranging between 2 to 5%. But for the core cloud, which actually was the biggest chunk, as far as the client spend is concerned, the savings identified were more than 20%. So, there are instances of, cross-subsidization, like Kunal said, and it's really important to benchmark each and every line item in the contract and not just benchmark, 3 or 5 of them and, expect that, whatever is the trend which has been observed in those would be applicable for the remaining line items as well. And if we move on, we want to also share some learnings with regard to contracting with the public cloud hyperscalers. So again, over the last 12 months, we have seen multiple cases of clients being able to mold their contracts, for AWS or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud to achieve specific objectives that they had identified. For example, with Azure, we have seen payment terms getting extended from the standard 30 days to longer durations, such as 45 days or 90 days. Even when it comes to other clauses like audit rights, we have observed that Microsoft agreed to a different frequency for auditing as compared to what is mentioned in their standard clauses. And similarly for price protection and auto renewal also, we have seen that there is flexibility and there is room to get the desired outcome. It's a standard negotiation game, and many times enterprises are able to achieve the desired objectives. With that, Abhishek, I'll hand it over back to you.
So thanks Rahul, Kunal, Shritika for sharing these insights. While we have answered a few questions on the go in the chat window, there are a few which some of our participants had shared in advance also. So perhaps we have time to cover a few of them. Rahul, in fact, the first one which I'd request you to share some thought on is the Gen AI, with that being the bright shiny object in the room. Are we seeing companies expecting more productivity in proposals, right, than a year, or is it becoming table stakes? So very pertinent question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's definitely a situation where in live deals, we are seeing clients being very, very curious, with regard to what kind of benefits providers are able to articulate with regard to Gen AI related benefits. I'm saying curious because it's not as if all the enterprises have a very clear idea about the kind of productivity improvements that they should expect. They want to understand, they are trying to go to the absolute level of detail to understand, what is it that they will ultimately get, from a productivity improvement standpoint. And, separating the fluff or the sales spiel from the actual committed productivity improvements is again a very key focus area for enterprises today. I think having said that, if we kind of look at 10 deals, it's not as if in all 10 deals there are very clear productivity improvements being called out. It's only in a handful of deals where we see that level of detailing and the actual commitments being made around Gen AI benefits.
Okay, thanks, Rahul. Kunal, I think we have time for one more question. And this was also, again, the whole insourcing, outsourcing aspect, right? So there was a question that does it make sense to plan for insourcing after a few years of an outsourcing deal?
Yeah. So, see, insourcing after years of outsourcing is usually a highly strategic, decision for the enterprise side. Based upon our experience, I would say there are three situations that we have come across wherein the enterprise chose to insource. So, number one, Abhishek, you touched it. During the start of the webinar, is the build, operate, transfer model, wherein clearly it is known beforehand and as part of the contract as well, that there would be a transfer of resources and assets from the service provider to the enterprise. This is a clear case of strategic alignment and vision for the enterprise. The second, I would say, in scenarios wherein the service provider is unable to meet the service quality or the innovation commitments, in those scenarios, we have seen enterprises taking a call and maybe insourcing a few towers or service areas. And at the same time, they would have ramped up their own capabilities to service those, areas. And number three, and again, this is a bit rare, but considering the dynamics and regulations which are changing quite rapidly, see, if the business case of outsourcing is not commercially, attractive, and if there are concerns around the data privacy as guided by global regulations such as the GDPR, in fact, we did see some cases in the Europe location wherein the enterprise chose to insource from the providers. So data security, confidentiality, and data privacy, again, if there are uncertainties around that, those could be the scenarios wherein insourcing could actually make much more sense for the enterprise.
Sure. Thanks, Kunal. All right. So those are the questions we could take. I think we'll just take a minute to move to the next page, just to provide an overview that we assist procurement teams in capturing value from services spent through memberships and focused projects. So across both programs. Shithika, you want to give a quick update on the depth and coverage across service categories?
Sure. Okay. So just to put on some light on how do we do any kind of pricing advisory, it's basically through the rich database that we have, which does not only include FD rate card intelligence, but also extends to solution-based insights, contractual intelligence, any underlying financial engineering, and more. Through our pricing analytics as a service model, we assist a lot of clientele when it comes to their outsourcing landscape. And through that, we get access to actual contract, bid insights, which lead to some of these pricing advisory initiatives. The broad service line coverage includes right from application services to engineering, cloud and infra, cybersecurity, consulting, and also BPO services. So I think, Abhishek, we are on top of time, but would you like to take a minute and conclude?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. The readers can go through the slide on our SaaS and cloud products coverage also. But having said that, thank you so much to all the participants for joining in, keeping the session interactive through your questions. And if there's any follow-up questions that may come through, do feel free to reach out. We'll try and see if we can answer some of the questions which we could not cover. We can answer those offline. Thank you so much and have a great day.